He was just a quiet carpenter, a single dad, doing his best to raise a 5-year-old boy. She was a nurse no one noticed until one stormy night, when he saw her crying at a bus stop and offered her a ride. He didn't know she used to be a top doctor in Boston. She didn't know he carried scars from war and from being left behind. They were strangers, until fate brought them face to face in an emergency room. When his son's life was on the line, she was the only one who could save him. But what came next was more than rescue. It was the start of something real. Some storms test us, others bring us home. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. In the quiet town of Ashland, Virginia, the morning always came slow, not lazy, but steady, just the way Tyler Reed liked it. He was 38 years old, a veteran of Afghanistan, a carpenter by trade, and father to a 5-year-old boy who never seemed to run out of questions. Most days, Tyler measured time in two things: the smell of sawdust and the sound of little shoes on hardwood floors. His workshop sat behind their modest one-story home. The door stuck in the summer and whined in the winter, but inside it was sacred space, half lumber, half memory, and entirely his. Tyler's day began before sunrise, always. He moved quietly through the kitchen so Lucas wouldn't wake too soon. Heating coffee in an old tin kettle and setting out the cereal bowl with dinosaurs on it, the green one always had to face forward. By 6:45, he'd be tying Lucas's shoes, one knee on the floor, his big hands careful around tiny feet. The boy would chatter about clouds or frogs or the dream he had last night about flying trucks. Tyler just listened. Listening was what he did best. His late wife used to say he had a quiet heart, strong, but hard to reach. When she left, he didn't argue. He just stayed for Lucas. The scars Tyler carried weren't just from the army. They were from promises kept long after others stopped believing in them. He wasn't bitter, but he'd built his life with the same care he gave his wood-strong joints: quiet grain and no room for showmanship. And yet, there was a face he kept seeing, not in dreams but in passing. A woman with sharp eyes and tired shoulders. They'd crossed paths twice, both times at the local VA center. Once as he walked in and she walked out, barely brushing past him in the narrow hallway. The other time she stood near the vending machine, reading a flyer about PTSD support groups. He almost said something. Almost, but life didn't slow down for almost. That was 2 months ago. He hadn't seen her since. Didn't even know her name. Until the rain came. That Tuesday started like any other. Light drizzle at first, then full downpour by afternoon. By the time Tyler wrapped up a small repair job at the church and headed to pick up Lucas from preschool, the streets shimmered like riverbeds. He turned onto Main Street, windshield wipers struggling to keep up. That's when he saw her. At the bus stop just past the hardware store, under a thin plastic awning, sat the same woman from the VA center. She wore hospital scrubs, navy blue, soaked to the skin, and her shoulders shook in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Tyler slowed. He knew better than to interfere, but something in the way she sat upright, but unraveling, made him pull to the curb. He rolled down the window halfway. "You need a ride." She turned, eyes red-rimmed, but steady. Recognition flickered just for a second. Then she nodded. No words, just a nod. She slid into the passenger seat without a word, dripping water onto the floor mat. Tyler handed her a clean shop towel from the dash. She took it like someone who wasn't used to being offered anything. "Tyler," he said simply. She hesitated. "Elena." They didn't say much else. Rain tapped on the roof like soft percussion. The heater hummed low. From the car seat in the back, Lucas piped up, "Daddy, what's evaporation again?" Tyler chuckled. "We just went over this. Buddy." But he glanced at Elena. "I'm not great with science talk." She turned, her voice gentle but clear. "Imagine the sun giving water molecules tiny wings so they can fly up into the sky." Lucas's eyes lit up in the rearview mirror. And when they get cold, their wings get heavy. She continued. They fall back down as rain. Lucas clapped once, thrilled. Oh, that's why puddles go away. Tyler glanced at her. Thanks. Elena just nodded, her fingers still gripping the towel. He noticed they trembled slightly, even though the heater was on. The drive only lasted 7 minutes, but something about it felt longer, not in a bad way, more like time had slowed down to make room for something fragile. When they reached her apartment complex, a rundown beige building with cracked steps, she reached into her pocket and paused. No wallet, she murmured, mostly to herself. Tyler waved it off. No charge. Just pay it forward sometime. She looked at him then. Really looked. Not many people stop anymore. He shrugged. I guess I still do. Elna stepped out into the rain, pulling her thin jacket tight. She didn't say goodbye, just offered a faint smile before disappearing up the stairs. Tyler sat in the truck a moment longer. Lucas was busy trying to catch raindrops on his window with a marker cap. Dad, yeah, bud, she was nice. Tyler nodded, watching the building's dark windows. She was... That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep with stuffed dinosaurs tucked around him like guards, Tyler sat alone in his workshop. He ran his hands over the edge of a half-finished bookshelf, but his mind wasn't on the wood. It was on a quiet woman in navy scrubs, and the way she'd explained rain like it was magic. 3 days passed. Then came the phone call every parent dreads. Lucas had taken a tumble on the preschool playground. Just a bad landing on wet mulch, they said. But he'd hit his head. They suggested the emergency room at Ashland General just in case. Tyler drove faster than he should have. Knuckles white on the steering wheel. In the pediatric waiting area, the air smelled like antiseptic and nervous energy. Tyler paced. Lucas sat quietly beside him, subdued in a way that wasn't like him at all. Then a door opened, and there she was. Elena Park, the nurse called. Elena appeared in crisp scrubs, hair tied back, clipboard in hand. She blinked when she saw them. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by something softer. Lucas, she asked gently. He nodded. You're the rain lady, he said plainly. Tyler felt tension drain from his shoulders. She knelt beside Lucas. Not rushed, not clinical, just steady. Can I take a look at that bump, she asked. As she examined him, she explained every step. What the stethoscope did. Why the light might tickle his eyes. He's going to be just fine, she said at last, standing and meeting Tyler's eyes. Nothing serious. I'll bring him a grape popsicle after the scan, if that's okay with Dad. Tyler gave a faint smile. Yeah, he'd like that. Elena kept her word, and Tyler kept watching the way she moved through the room, the way other staff deferred to her, the way Lucas reached for her hand without thinking. 2 weekends later, the farmer's market returned to Main Street. Tyler set up a table like he always did, cutting boards, toy trucks, salt cellars, small things but well made. Lucas sat beside him, arranging pinecone animals they glued together the night before. His head had healed, but he still wore a knitted beanie from a neighbor upstairs just in case. Around mid-morning, Tyler saw her. Elena stood near a produce stand, considering tomatoes with clinical precision. Lucas spotted her first. Elena, he waved, bouncing on the stool. She walked over, a little shy. We make everything ourselves, Lucas announced proudly. Elena ran her fingers over a maple cutting board. Her touch lingered, but when she saw the price tag, she set it down. Looks like your son is the real salesman. She smiled. Tyler chuckled. Yeah, I just make the stuff. He's the charm. Conversation came easier this time. They talked about food, about growing basil, about how Lucas insisted spaghetti only tasted right with meatballs shaped like stars. Elena admitted most nights she didn't cook at all. Cooking for one just feels pointless, she said. Her words hung there longer than she intended. That evening, back in his shop, Tyler found himself sketching a smaller version of the cutting board she'd admired. His hands moved with purpose. It wasn't just about the wood anymore. By early spring, the community garden reopened. Tyler and Lucas tended a small corner plot they'd kept since last year. Carrots, beans, tomatoes. Lucas liked watering things more than planting them. One Sunday afternoon, they saw Elena struggling with a hose in the far corner. Her rows were crooked, her seedlings drowning. "You're flooding them?" Lucas said, stepping forward with the certainty only a 5-year-old could carry. "Plants need room to breathe. That's what Dad says." Elena laughed, really laughed. "Well, I guess I need gardening lessons." From that day on, their Sundays were shared. They brought sandwiches and thermoses. Lucas told stories about dragons who lived in cabbage patches. Tyler watched the way Elena relaxed around his son. Her usual precision softened. She started wearing jeans and old sneakers instead of work shoes. She watched Tyler on, too. Noticed how his hands, so strong with tools, were always gentle when fixing Lucas's shoelaces. How he listened more than he spoke. One afternoon, Lucas's preschool sent home a project, Draw Your Family. Tyler found the paper tucked inside the crayon box. It showed 3 stick figures. A big one with brown hair, a small one with messy shoes, and one with a ponytail holding both their hands. No names. Just the word home. He stared at it for a long time, then slid it into the back of his workshop notebook, behind unfinished invoices and order sheets. The cutting board took a week to finish. He chose cherry wood with maple inlay, sanded it smooth until it gleamed. On the back, he carved her initials EP small, near the corner. Not showy, just enough. He didn't give it to her. Not yet, because Tyler still remembered how things could fall apart, how people could vanish, even when they said they wouldn't. His ex-wife had done just that. Gone from Virginia to Seattle in the span of a month. Said she needed space. Never looked back. So Tyler hesitated. Even when Elena laughed with Lucas. Even when she stayed long after the sandwiches were gone. Even when it all felt like something real. Then came the Sunday she brought over soup. Not in a plastic container, but in a real ceramic bowl. With bread and stories about her grandmother's garden back in Oregon. After dinner, she helped Lucas wash glitter off his fingers from some chaotic preschool craft. They both hummed the same tune without realizing it. Tyler stood in the doorway and watched them. He didn't say anything. Just stood there, one hand resting on the finished cutting board, still hidden under a cloth. Something was building. Slow, but steady. Like all good things. Spring came fast that year. The kind of soft warmth that made the garden bloom early. Tyler had just delivered a bookshelf to the pediatric ward, a quiet donation. No name attached. He was pushing a cart through the side hallway of Ashland General, heading for the elevator, when raised voices caught his ear. He paused, instinctively. Old habits from combat zones never really left. Around the corner stood Elena, and across from her, a tall man in a charcoal suit, voice cold as steel. "You had the nerve to humiliate an entire institution," the man snapped, loud enough for others to turn their heads. "You destroyed reputations with your self-righteous crusade." Elena stood firm, shoulders back, chin high, calm, but her hands, Tyler noticed, were clenched so tight, her knuckles had gone pale. "You think you helped those kids," the man continued. "You nearly cost us our funding." Tyler's stomach dropped. He stepped forward, but froze when he heard another word. Boston. Then came the rest. Whistleblower. Internal investigation. Blacklisted. It hit like a punch to the chest. All this time he had no idea. When the man walked away, Elena turned slowly, saw Tyler standing there, and the look on her face said everything. She opened her mouth to explain, but he spoke first. "You were a doctor?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. She nodded, eyes steady. "I was. And you never thought to tell me." The edge in his voice cut deeper than he meant. "I didn't lie to you, Tyler, but you didn't tell me the truth either." He stepped back, heart pounding. "I thought I knew who you were." Elena looked at him, quiet but unflinching. I am the same person you met in the rain. But it was too late. Old fears stirred. Old wounds reopened. You'll leave, he said flatly, just like the last one did. He didn't wait for her reply, just walked away. Days passed. Then a week. Tyler ignored her texts. Ignored the knock at his workshop door one evening. Lucas asked where she was, but Tyler brushed it off. She's busy, he said, even as guilt chewed at his gut. Lucas drew less, laughed less. And one night, Tyler found a crayon picture stuffed in the trash, 3 stick figures. One of them crossed out, then came the fever. Lucas woke up flushed and shivering. 102.8 degrees by the time Tyler checked again. Children's Tylenol did nothing. By nightfall, he was limp in Tyler's arms. The emergency room was packed. Triage nurse apologized, 2-hour wait at least. Tyler sat in the hard chair, holding Lucas close, watching the color drain from his boy's face. Then the curtain pulled back. Elena. She wore her scrubs, hair tied back, calm and focused. But her eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. She didn't hesitate. One look at Lucas, and she moved. Possible meningitis, she said quickly to the attending. Recent head trauma, fever spiking, stiff neck. Orders flew from her lips. IV fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics. Prepare for lumbar puncture. Tyler could barely breathe. She never looked at him, not once. But she saved his son, right in front of him. It was past midnight when Lucas finally stabilized. Tyler stepped out into the hallway, found Elena at the nurse's station, charting notes. Thank you, he said, voice low. I took an oath, she replied without looking up. To help people, that hasn't changed. He lingered. I heard the whole thing. That day, in the hallway, she didn't answer, just kept writing. You were offered your job back in Boston. A slow nod. They cleared my name, sent a formal apology, offered reinstatement and back pay. Then why are you still here? She set her pen down. Because this, she motioned to the hospital, to the chart, to the quiet. This is where I belong now. The next morning, Tyler drove home in silence. Lucas slept in the back seat, breathing steady. The weight in Tyler's chest hadn't lifted. It had changed. He parked in the driveway, stepped into the workshop. The cutting board he'd made for her still sat under the cloth. He pulled it out, traced her initials with one thumb. It wasn't just guilt, it was regret, and maybe hope. Elena's apartment was nearly empty. The landlord shrugged. She left yesterday, he said. Something about heading east. Tyler drove to the hospital, checked the staff lot, found her by chance loading boxes into her old sedan, engine still warm. You're leaving, he asked, voice rough. She didn't turn around. I've been offered my life back. Tyler, but you said this was your home. Elena paused. I said it felt like home. Her voice softened. Until it didn't. He stepped closer. I messed up. She nodded. Yeah, you did. But I wasn't running from you, she said, finally turning. I was running from the idea that I didn't deserve something better. He held out the cutting board. I made this for you. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. She turned it over, saw her initials, then saw the note tucked inside a shallow groove, handwritten, folded. Healers need healing too. She looked up, eyes glistening. And you, what do you need? Tyler. He exhaled. Time, and maybe a second chance. They stood there, in the quiet lot behind a hospital. 2 people with sharp edges. One had been brave enough to speak up. The other, finally brave enough to speak from the heart. Lucas stirred in the back seat of Tyler's truck, and when he saw her, he smiled. You're not gone, he whispered. Elena leaned in, resting her hand gently on his hair. No, sweet boy, she said softly. I'm right here. 3 days passed. Then came the knock. Elena opened the door to her new apartment, a smaller space across town, still sparse, but hers. Outside stood Tyler and Lucas, rain jackets damp, cheeks pink from the cold. Lucas held something in both hands, wrapped in a soft towel, carried with the care of a priceless treasure. "We made you something," he said simply. Elena stepped aside. Tyler followed, his heart pounding harder than it had on any battlefield. Inside, they placed the gift on her kitchen table, a wooden medicine cabinet, rich cherry wood, soft maple inlay, smooth to the touch. On the inside of the door, carved by hand, were the words, "Healers need healing too." She traced the letters with her fingers, silent, moved. In the middle shelf, tucked between two small jars, was a folded note. Inside it read, "Thank you for saving my son, for seeing me, even when I couldn't see myself." Elena blinked quickly, her throat tight. Before she could speak, Lucas tugged her sleeve. "Can you eat dinner with us?" he asked. "Dad burned spaghetti. It's bad." Tyler winced, but Elena laughed. "I'd like that," she said, and for the first time in weeks, something settled back into place. That evening, they ate dinner together at Tyler's kitchen table. The food wasn't perfect, but the warmth in the room made up for it. Lucas told stories between bites of overcooked noodles. Tyler poured 3 glasses of apple juice with military precision, and Elena, she smiled more than she had in months. They didn't talk about the past, not directly, but something unspoken passed between the adults, an agreement to try again. Not from the beginning, but from where they were, together. 6 months later, the back half of Tyler's workshop looked different. New wiring, fresh paint, and a small sign over the added doorway, "Ashland Community Care." They opened it quietly. No ribbon cutting, just a soft launch with one borrowed exam table and a box of donated supplies. Elena worked 1 evening a week. Free care for local families, especially veterans. No insurance, no paperwork, just dignity. Tyler kept crafting furniture in the front. Sometimes patients wandered in and asked questions about the wood. Sometimes they left with both medicine and a handmade spoon. It worked, because they worked together. Lucas adjusted too. He had more drawings taped to the fridge than Tyler could count. Most featured 3 people, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. At school, he introduced Elena without hesitation. "This is my almost mom," he said once during pickup. Neither adult corrected him. On Sundays, they kept their ritual, the garden, the sandwiches, and quiet hours spent pulling weeds or chasing butterflies. But one Sunday was different, because that morning, all 3 put on old sneakers, packed brown paper lunches, and drove out past the town line. The local Veterans Center stood at the edge of Ashland, modest, aging, but full of memory. Tyler hadn't been back in a while. That day, they volunteered together. Tyler repaired a broken railing. Elena organized the outdated medication shelves. Lucas handed out cookies to every man who wore a cap with patches on it. No one asked what their title was. They just saw the way they moved. Like family. Inside, an older man sat alone in a wheelchair, staring out the window. Lucas climbed onto the bench beside him without a word. Just sat there. The man didn't speak either, but after a few minutes, he reached over and took Lucas's hand. Elena watched from the doorway, her throat catching. Tyler stood behind her, arms crossed gently. Neither said a word, because some things don't need to be said. That night, back home, Lucas lined up his rain boots by the door. Next to them sat Tyler's larger pair, and beside both Elena's, muddied from the garden, laces untied, 3 pairs, different sizes, same purpose, a family. Weeks passed, then months. The clinic grew slowly, 1 patient at a time. A retired nurse started volunteering Tuesdays. Then a pharmacist offered to supply samples. One afternoon, Elena opened a letter postmarked from Boston. Another job offer, Another apology, more money than she could justify. She handed it to Tyler over breakfast. "Should I go?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "You could," he said, "but I hope you won't." She nodded, then tore the letter in half. "I'm already home," she replied. They never rushed anything. No dramatic declarations, no sudden promises, but the signs were there. The photo Lucas drew that Elena pinned on the clinic bulletin board, the extra toothbrush in her bathroom, the quiet way they moved around each other like two halves of something repaired, and on the one-year anniversary of the night they met, Tyler pulled the truck to the same curb, same street, same time of day, but this time, Elena stood waiting, umbrella in one hand, Lucas in the other. He stopped, smiled, and opened the door. She climbed in without hesitation. Lucas buckled his seatbelt with practiced ease. Rain fell on the windshield, soft and steady, but inside, everything felt clear. At home, the three pairs of muddy shoes stayed lined up by the door, and in the small light above the porch, a new carving appeared on the doorframe. Simple, neat, built with grace, not bought, not given, built like everything else in their life. Because sometimes the families we find are stronger than the ones we lose. And sometimes the quiet people who stop in the rain turn out to be the ones who stay. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.